Broadcasting live. It's America's longest running talk show on computers. It's Computer America, bringing you the biggest names in technology with guest interviews, new products, and your emails. Listen live at computeramerica.com on any device around the world. Email the show at live@computeramerica.com or find us on social media. Be sure to check out our website for contests, giveaways, show notes, live video stream, podcasts, and more. You're listening to Computer America.
Hello and welcome into the Computer America Show. We are the nation's longest running, nationally syndicated radio talk show on computers and technology. Thank you for joining us. I'm your host, Ben Crossman, and I hope all of you are having a wonderful day and we can make it a lot better with some Computer America because, hey, in the second part of the program, we're going to have a lot of different news stories, tech stories. There's some big ones, some scary ones, but hey, also some good ones. So stick around for that. Later part in the show, if we have time, we will be doing computer and technology news. And that's brought to you by OWC, whereas in the first segment, we will be talking with the company as we normally do, but I believe this will be the first time we have the pleasure of talking with this particular company, which is called Cynerio. And yeah, it's, we're going to talk all about how they, everything they do to protect connected healthcare. And this is a really a booming field when it comes to cybersecurity. And then of course, more and more data flowing back and forth. A much needed renewed interest in how to keep that private and safe. So thank you for joining us. And again, hope you had a great weekend. So if you want to find out more about Computer America, feel free to head on over to our website. It's probably the best way that you will have to find out everything that we do here on the program, be that reviews, articles, things like that, show notes, link to our guest website. Everything and anything will be at computeramerica.com. And while you're there, be sure to check out the social media contest brought to you by Logitech, and be sure to check out the live video stream brought to you by, again, OWC. So I think with all that being said, and of course, feel free to join us over in our chat room, twitch.tv/Computer America. But morning announcements are over. Let's go ahead and get things started with our guest. So joining us today is none other than the CEO of Cynerio. And here to tell us all about the company, what they do, is Mr. Leon Lerman. And Leon, thank you for joining us here on Computer America.
Hey Ben, thanks for having me.
Yeah, our pleasure, our pleasure. So why don't you go ahead and start at the beginning and tell us a bit about Cynerio for those of us who haven't heard of it. What is the background on the company and what is your background? How did you find yourself working in tech?
So Cynerio is focusing on a problem that is really booming. So it's a cybersecurity problem of hospitals. And more specifically, we're helping healthcare providers to protect their connected medical devices from cyber threats. The reason I think that this is really becoming interesting in the last couple of years is the fact that obviously we now see a lot more connected medical devices, things like MRIs, patient monitors, insulin pumps, IV pumps, ventilators, blood gas analyzers, turning basically from these disconnected devices into these smart computers that some of them are connected to the internal hospital's network and others are even connected to the internet. And the issue is that with all this connectivity, which is good because it allows hospitals and physicians to provide better patient care, they were not built with security in mind. So we're still seeing these devices running very old operating systems like Windows XP, Windows 95, using some very obsolete communication protocols, and they're typically out of scope for IT security professionals and IT security solutions. So really becoming more of a threat.
Well, and let's go ahead and start there. Why would people want to target medical devices? Because, I mean, at its core, I think a lot of people can understand stealing debit card information or, hacking into people's bank accounts or, doing some kind of wire fraud scam, things like that. But knowing that your insulin level, knowing what your insulin level is, or maybe even affecting the device that is monitoring it. I mean, there's not really a lot of room for monetary gain there. Is this, like what is the true threat to medical data?
So this is actually interesting, and we also published a research about some of the trends on the darknet, on the deep web, in regards to medical records and data stolen from hospitals. So the thing is that in the last couple of years, we're actually seeing that the healthcare industry is one of the most targeted industry by hackers. Even last year, it was the most targeted in terms of number of breaches. And the main reason is because the protected healthcare information, or in other words, it's called PHI, is actually one of the most valuable assets on the black market. Mainly because it includes a lot of personal identifiable information about people, which could be monetized in terms of identity theft. It includes some medical data, which can be utilized for medical fraud. And unlike credit cards, for example, it cannot be canceled. So it has a longer lifetime value.
So by saying that it can't be canceled, it's like you can't change your social security number. You can't change, or it's really hard to, or you can't change the fact that you have a certain condition and you have these medical records. Like you can't be reissued a different medical record. Is that kind of what you mean?
Exactly. You cannot change your identity
Right.
and your medical condition. This is absolutely right.
Right. So that information obviously very, very valuable in the right hands, or at least in the wrong hands. And it's, I guess, your job to make sure that that doesn't happen. So, and let's talk about, kind of why you decided to start Cynerio in the first place, because, this is like, at its core, it's a very easy problem to solve. And it's, hey, if all of you did away with all of your old, outdated stuff and got on the latest and greatest and, kept it up to date like any other computer, you'd be much, much safer in terms of security. But, throwing out an MRI machine that may cost a couple $1,000,000, not really feasible, not something a hospital is going to want to do. So why did you start this company and saying this is a problem that we can solve if it is such a, kind of complex and expensive problem to fix?
Yeah, that's a great question, Ben. And the thing is that both my co-founder Daniel and myself, we're cybersecurity people. We have over 20 years of experience in cybersecurity, and I was working and solving problems in the financial sector, and working with retail and tech companies. And as the problem in healthcare really turned out to be bigger and more critical with hackers targeting it more and more, I felt that there is a need to have something specific, to have a specific solution for healthcare. And as you mentioned, the medical devices that are could not be protected by any other solutions definitely requires a targeted solution and targeted platform to address this problem. And on a personal angle, also I think that the opportunity to not just protect data, but also contribute to patient safety and make sure that the service of these devices is not disrupted and is not affecting patients is also quite an interesting angle in terms of cybersecurity, and an important one. I believe that it's more important than just protecting data or a server, as most of these devices are actually providing patient care and sometimes life-saving care. So
Yeah.
it's important.
I think that one of the most recent examples of what can really go wrong if these systems are compromised, the National Health Services over in Europe, and that was just kind of like the front end system, to check people in and pull up their records and things like that. That was compromised by malware. I think it was like adware, and it pretty much locked everything down. And yeah, I mean, it made people have to go hours out of their way to get the healthcare that they needed because their computers were locked up. And that's not even that was solved relatively quickly. So I guess, you can see things really starting to get really, really bad if these machines or if these systems don't come back up within a matter of hours. So, yep, that's where you come in. And let's talk about kind of what you have come up with for a solution, because like I said, there's an easy way to do this, and I'm sure if you just unplugged everything from the internet and said, congratulations, no hacker can now get into this, your job would be done. But that's not a viable solution. So what have you come up with? And for anyone out there, we're on your website, by the way. We're checking it out. You can follow along with the video, but you have a solution here highlighting visibility, detection, protection. What have you come up with, and why is this the best solution?
Yes, so we've built a specific solution addressing exactly that, the connected medical devices in hospitals. In order to address this problem, we believe that the right approach is to provide a network-based solution, as you typically cannot install anything on the device due to FDA regulations and liability and warranty concerns. So we're providing a network-based solution that sits on the hospital's network. It's absolutely passive, so it doesn't interfere with the clinical workflow. It just gets a copy of all the communication that gets in and out of from the medical device ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And we're utilizing machine learning to actually model the device behavior. We really want to be able to understand what the medical devices are doing, who are they talking with, and which medical workflows are they taking part in. And that really gives us the understanding of what the medical devices are supposed to be doing on the network. Once we know what they're supposed to be doing, we can detect anomalies once they're doing something they're not supposed to do, and then we can identify the threat and stop the attack to ensure both patient safety and data protection.
That is eerily similar to the approach that I've heard that healthcare is trying to take with all this connected data, where it's managing by exception. It's, you let all the data kind of flow, and the only time that you ever really, kind of pay attention to it is when something abnormal happens, whenever something is exceptionally, out of place, maybe a communication to a wrong server, or, someone accessing from a country that you didn't really specify could access. So managing by exception seems to be, at least part of what you're doing. You look for these, and you said it's all automated and it's all kind of behind the scenes. So the employees will never really truly have to, kind of change passwords every 2 weeks. Well, whatever, whatever good hygiene, security hygiene that you should use. But why did you decide to make it passive instead of making your own system that everyone can run on?
So I think it's really important for the solution to be passive because, again, we're not just talking about normal endpoints. We're talking about medical devices that are providing patient care. So we definitely don't want to get in the way of the medical workflow and the medical processes, and we want to make sure that we're not intrusive and just getting a copy of the communication to. And I think it really it's part of a larger strategy, which I think that security needs to take, and security needs to enable business, and protect the business, and not prevent the business or potentially compromise the continuity of the business processes, and that's the reason we're doing that passively. And just to your first comment. Exclusion is really important, but the thing that we are doing is by utilizing machine learning, we can really understand what is the normal flow of operation and what are the business, the medical workflows and operations that these devices are taking part in. And I think this is really key in a solution that is focusing on a specific industry, is really understand the context of this industry, in our case, healthcare. You really want to understand what these devices should be doing, right? And which medical process they are taking part. Because once you understand that, then one, your anomalies will be a lot more accurate you will have less false positives. And the second thing is that you will be able to provide real visibility into what should be happening and why is it happening the way it is. And this is what we're focusing on in Cynerio.
No, it makes perfect sense. And talking from like here on the show, we talk a lot about when companies come on the show, and maybe just from like a corporate setting, there's basic things that they teach their employees to do and not do. Those include don't click links in emails, double check email addresses so you're not talking to someone who maybe isn't who they claim they are, or don't go to sketchy looking websites with with weird misspellings, things like that. Just basic things that employees can do to help protect the company and protect the company data from being lost. Is there anything that patients, because like you said, whenever, a lot of these instances that hit the news saying that so-and-so company, so-and-so service lost all of the patient data, the patient really didn't have a lot of recourse in how to further protect themselves. They couldn't pick up the phone and say, hey, could you be sure to put my data, in a separate server, behind a password? Like, what can we do as patients to really protect our data? Is there anything we can do, or is this solely on the medical providers?
Yeah, that's a good question, and of course the main responsibility for once the patient arrives into the hospital, it's usually typically because there's some problem, right? The patient focuses on their own problems and their own medical condition. So of course the primary responsibility is the hospital needs to take care of the patient's privacy and safety. In terms of the patient, what they can make sure is that all the documents and all the identifiable information that they carry and they bring into the hospital or they are given, they need to make sure that they don't leave it there, or that they do not take this information and put it to people that they are in the hands of people that they don't know, and of course just normal things as not connecting to the internet network there, and logging into their emails once they're on the hospital's network, which are in many cases not as protected as one would have thought. So just these standard things typically should be good enough for the patients, as the IT and the hospitals are mainly responsible to make sure that their data and safety are provided.
Right. No, and it's and so it sounds like you're trying to say that you should treat the maybe the hospital Wi-Fi, or the hospital networks as a public Wi-Fi hotspot. So there's a bunch of things that you should and should not do when you're connected to a public Wi-Fi spot, and that includes just knowing that everything you're doing is probably or could be logged by someone else who's on the network, and just kind of watching all that traffic as well. So makes sense there. Let's go back real quick to that report that you put out not too long ago about the dark web and the medical information. Can you give us some examples of what happens? Let's say someone loses their medical records and they're compromised and they're sold en masse, and they draw the unlucky lottery number, and all their information is now being used to, for nefarious ends. How can you kind of walk us through that process on how they turn medical information from, I had a broken leg, to, hey, I now have maybe credit cards, a home loan, something like that. Can you walk us through kind of what happens to our medical data after it's stolen?
Yes, absolutely. So a few of the examples that we published in our research, just really showing the way that hackers are monetizing this data. So I think one example is really the fact that even once you're stealing a patient record or a PHI from a hospital, that this record includes a lot of personal information. Now, on the black market, the hackers are offering something that is called a full, which basically it's a package of personal information that you can get. And the pricing goes that as more personal identifiable information you have, things like name, date of birth, last name, phone number, address, and things like that. The more information you have, the more expensive is the record, because the more information you have, the more easier it is for a bad guy to actually do identity theft and be able to actually pull it through and move forward with it. So we're seeing that offered as most of the fools that we are seeing is from this information that was gathered from hospitals, and we published a few examples of that in our blog.
So yeah, and just real quick, I mean, again, we're looking at the website on the video portion, but I'm kind of shocked because you have a picture here, and it's a baby, and there's, I'm sure, a lot of records that go along with this. U.S. fools, 1998 to 2008, minors, kids, and like you're buying confidential medical information, but at the same time, it doesn't look too dissimilar from like eBay or Amazon checkout or just any other checkout. Like it's not, it's not some kind of smoky den. It's just like any other storefront.
Yes, it's becoming more and more easy for for hackers to sell this type of information, and it's becoming very accessible, both to the people that want to sell and also to the people that want to buy. And the specific example that you mentioned about the babies, this is another trend we're seeing, is that hackers are specifically targeting PHI, again, protected healthcare information of babies and children under the age of 18. And the reason for that, from what we're seeing, is that they're actually, once they have that, and they can actually do extortion for the parents of these children. And they're looking specifically for children that are coming from more wealthy families. And then they're just threatening the parents that if they will not pay the ransom, then they will publish information about their children, from the assumption that children is probably the most precious and the most important thing parents have, and they will do anything to protect them. So that's another trend, really worrying trend we're seeing.
It's obviously very devious, and that is horrible to hear because, hey, obviously kids, minors especially, they don't even know, like even if you told an 8-year-old your information is in the hands of someone who wants to use it for ill will, they'd be like, cool, what's for lunch? Because they have no concept of how to go about this, what this could mean, the ramifications. So it's completely on the parents, and you can see where it's a very emotional place that you could come from, and how obviously you'd want to pay the Bitcoin or whatever it is that they happen to kind of demand of you. So, and also I see here, also in your report, they have hacking as a service. We've heard of this as well, but is this also, is this as popular to say, I want the data of this person, or I want the data from this hospital? Is that also, something happening?
So data from a specific hospital, we are also seeing examples of that, and today, as you mentioned, as this platform is becoming more and more accessible, then obviously a lot of more bad guys can offer their services, which are very diverse in terms of things we're seeing. And another one example, as we mentioned in this hacking as a service, we're seeing that hackers compromise specific email servers in hospitals, and they're letting the people out know that they have it, because one of the, as you mentioned, phishing campaigns in the beginning of this of this interview. Mm-hmm. And yes, it's for a phishing campaign to be successful. In many cases, it would be a lot more effective to send an email from healthcare, right? Because if you want to disguise yourself as a healthcare institution that is now sending an email to another healthcare institution, that would be a perfect disguise and would probably make the phishing campaign a lot more successful. So
Right.
these are some of the examples where we're seeing.
Right. And so let's okay. Imagine you had everyone that you have, that you are in touch with, because obviously this is a very interconnected kind of ecosystem that you're dealing with here, and security is only one part of it. Obviously, you mentioned you didn't want to get in the way of workflow, because if work can't get done, then everything kind of breaks down. What would be the biggest boon to you as a security professional? Is this the manufacturers of devices have to wisen up about security? Is this healthcare professionals have to realize that they're handling not just day-to-day information, but really sensitive information? Or is this about maybe I don't know, like let's say web providers who are providing the server space for these? What would be the biggest increase in security from your standpoint?
I think that it needs to be a joint effort to make medical devices more secure, and as they really have become the weakest link today in healthcare providers. The manufacturers, obviously, from their end, they need to include security in their cycles, right, in their production, both pre-market and also post-market. As many of these manufacturers, they are focused on the clinical action of the devices and all the related FDA approvals they need, and to make sure they're safe in terms of their medical use. But they're really not paying any attention to cybersecurity. And from the provider's point of view, they have their own liability and responsibility to make sure that their patients' data and safety is taken care of. So they definitely need to make sure that they are aware of the risk as a first step, that they really have the right visibility into all these medical entities. They really have this mapping of the medical workflows and the medical processes that these medical entities are taking part in. And to make sure that this risk is understood and that they're applying the right controls to decrease this risk. So I really believe it's a joint responsibility, and we all have to work together to solve this problem, because the consequences could be significant.
Yeah, and it's obviously you don't want this getting out there, but like we tell anyone who calls in or anyone who asks us, should I, what happens if I'm compromised? It's like, at this point, you should just kind of assume that you have been compromised to some extent, be it, maybe a bank card, maybe Social Security, maybe medical records, and just keep yourself monitored. Make sure you watch credit reports, things like that, and really keep an eye on it. But it sounds like you have the same philosophy on keeping an eye on it and, really detecting when things go wrong. If people want to find out more information, or if you wanted to leave anyone with, a final thought, where can they go, and what would you like to tell them?
So everyone can just go on our website. It's Cynerio, cynerio.co. We have all the information there about also the problem and the different implications and variations of the problem. We have some information about the different attack vectors and attack scenarios, and absolutely we'll be more than happy to show a demo of our solution. And if you're a healthcare provider and you're finding this problem important and interesting, that we will be more than happy to have a discussion and see how we can help.
Oh, awesome. Yeah. And I see that right there. You have request a demo. I'm assuming that this is obviously not a one size fits all. This is obviously something you would have to, kind of custom work with the person. But hey, it's been a lot of fun, and you seem to really have, handle on what it's going to take to secure these systems. So I will say this, that everyone, again, Cynerio.co, that's CO, if you want to check it out. A link to it in the show notes. And Leon, thank you so much for joining us here on Computer America. It was fun.
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me, Ben. It was fun. Thank you.
Our pleasure. Have a great one. Bye-bye.
You too. Bye-bye.
And everyone, there he goes. Music means we're going to take a break. We'll be right back. More Computer America right after this. Everyone, stay tuned.
Greece is cheap.
But the airfare costs a fortune.
Paris?
Not much closer, and again, airfare...
What about Puerto Vallarta?
Let's face it, flying anywhere is just too expensive.
Wait, what's this? Low-cost airlines.
With one call to low-cost airlines, you'll drastically slash your travel costs. We're talking insanely low airline prices to any of your favorite destinations. Where would you like to go? London, Rome, Costa Rica, Australia?
Wow, that's cheap.
So why wait? Call now to learn how crazy cheap it is to fly anywhere in the U.S. or international. Our prices are so low, we can't publish them. The only way to get them is to call to instantly hear the most amazing best deals on airline travel. It's that easy. So call now and start packing.
800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. 800-215-4461. That's 800-215-4461.
We are all Brother Wolf. 10 years ago, a group of locals banded together to create positive change. We took animals into our homes, held adoption events at local retailers, and talked to the community about our mission to help build a no-kill Asheville. A decade later, we have achieved so many victories for animals in need. There's been so much progress, yet there's still so much to do. As part of our year-long celebration, we encourage you to become a member of our special Compassionate Circle program. With a monthly donation of $10 or more, you will have behind-the-scenes access to the work we are doing at Brother Wolf. Our goal is to reach 1,000 members because we receive no government funding. Working together, we can help build and sustain no-kill communities. Learn more at compassionatecircle.bwar.org. We are a 501c3 tax-deductible organization.
And welcome back. Oh, yep, we're good. Welcome back to the Computer America Show. It is 32 minutes past the hour, and if you're just joining us, we just finished up our interview with our guest Cynerio, and yeah, we talked all about medical healthcare and data and protection and what they do with it. Actually, a very interesting segment. So if you feel like you want to go back and check it out, feel free. Where after the program, we of course do everything. We throw all that up on the podcast version of the program, which can be heard on iTunes, SoundCloud, Google Play, iHeartRadio, Blog Talk, many other places. You can find a copy of it there. But in the meantime, we are going to go ahead and move on to computer and technology news. And so let's go ahead and check that out. So this is a segment dedicated to all things new, news-related, and technology, and sometimes science, because we do have a few science ones in here. So here we go, computer and technology news, brought to you by OWC. I should really get a button for this. I got this. 1 second. Here we go. There we go. All right, so there's a couple of stories we can do. Let's do the super sciencey, techie ones, because these are super cool. And this one is Seeing is Believing. So if you can't watch the video portion, you should definitely go check this out. When it comes to the new world's smallest computer, or I guess the article says tiniest, but you get what I mean. This thing's small. So if you're watching the video portion and you see that there's a big glowing object, and when you look at that big glowing object, you say, wow, that looks like a big old rock or something. And nope, turns out that's actually a grain of rice. So it's a grain of rice, and this computer chip looks to be about 1/100th of the size of a grain of rice. It is crazy. So the world's tiniest computer makes a grain of rice seem massive. And this is by John Fingus, and this is from Engadget, but obviously the work was done by, I believe it was, the University of Michigan. So you didn't think scientists would let IBM's world's smallest computer boast go unchallenged. Well, sure enough, the University of Michigan has produced a temperature sensing computer, and they put computer in quotes. So obviously this thing will not run Windows, will not run Windows 8 or Windows 10 or anything, but it's a type of sensor, which I guess could be classified as a computer. And it measures just 0.04 cubic millimeters, or about the 10th of the size of IBM's former record setter. So the world's smallest computer from IBM's perspective was a little computer. It looked like a computer chip, obviously, and it fit on your fingertip. Like, I remember seeing it. It was a small square computer that was, about half the size of your fingertip. This thing is 1/10 that size. So, yeah, tiny, tiny, tiny. And they said it's so small that 1 grain of rice seems gigantic in comparison, and so sensitive that its transmission LED could instigate currents in its circuits. So, yeah, so here we go, saying that the size limitations force researchers to get creative to reduce the effect of light. And they switched from diodes to switch capacitors, so yay capacitors, going back to those things, and had to fight the relative increase in electrical noise that comes from running on a device that uses so little power. Because if it uses a little bit of power, that means it's going to be super, super sensitive when it comes to, just any kind of energy source. So the result is a sensor that can measure changes in extremely small regions like a group of cells in your body. And scientists have suspected that tumors are slightly hotter than healthy tissue, but it's been difficult to verify this until now, where the minuscule device could both check this claim and, if it proves true, gauge the effectiveness of cancer treatment. So, yeah, they're also looking to maybe put this or diagnose glaucoma from inside the eye, monitor biochemical processes, and even study, and here's the kicker, the super important part of all this, study tiny snails, because they need tiny computers. So, and they said, why the air quotes around computer then? Well, the tiny size is leading the university to question what a computer is, and that this does have a full-fledged processor, but it loses all data when it loses power, just like IBM's device. And that might be a deal breaker for people who expect a computer to be more complete. Still, this pushes the limits of computing power and suggests that nearly invisible computing may be commonplace before long. So, loses all data when it loses power. The way you fix that is, of course, you add a battery. That would, of course, increase size, but they were going for strictly the computer part, and you could obviously increase this. You could probably put a battery the size of itself, and hey, it would run or at least keep its data for a little bit longer. But as long as it does have an energy source and it runs off of, light or heat or whatever it runs off of, then I guess it does its job. So anyways, world's tiniest computer or world's smallest computer, and it is a wee little thing. So pretty darn cool there. So let's see. So there's that one. I really like that one because it was, kind of sciencey and techie mixed into one. Obviously not useful because not a lot of people are going to be, using these things in a day-to-day kind of thing, but maybe in a medical sense. So let's see, there's that one. And then the other one was Navy's Omniphobic coating for their ships. So for anyone out there, about a couple of years ago, like maybe 2, 3, 4 years ago, there was a slew of, a standard computer battery would squash that computer. Yeah, for anyone out there who's simply listening to the program and didn't get to see the computer, like if you held this thing up to a AA or a 9-volt battery and you think, hey, well that could power it. This computer was probably 1/50th the size of a 9-volt battery. So it's, like even a standard battery would completely eclipse this thing. It is just crazy, just how tiny it was. So, but back to the point where a couple of years ago, there was this trend of hydrophobic coatings where people would put them on the clothing, they would put them onto sidewalks, they would put them onto just about anything. Just about anything. And they would put water on it, they put mud on it, and they'd say, hey, look, water doesn't stick to this. And it was cool, you know, I was caught up in it just as much as the next person. Well, that is called a hydrophobic substance, and it means it's water repellent. Well, researchers have created an omniphobic, so obviously it will reject almost anything that comes into contact with the coating. And the Navy wants to put it on their ships to help them travel farther. And they said that they could even navigate a sea of peanut butter. And that was, you know, that was another exciting part where like they put hydrophobic coating on, like, let's say jars, and they were able to get every single bit of mayonnaise out of a jar with zero residue left over. Little things like that. So let's go ahead and say that researchers have already explored the idea of using water repellent ship coatings that let ships travel faster and farther, where the US Navy, however, is taking things a step further. And again, the University of Michigan, they were the one who created the tiny computer. Now they're making this one as well. They're saying that they have work on an omniphobic coating that shrugs off virtually any liquid, and that includes peanut butter, while lasting for a long time. Ships could theoretically glide through water without nearly as much friction as ordinary vessels, consuming less fuel and, of course, traveling longer. Because if you're using less of your gas, then you can use more gas to get even further. So, hey, awesome. So the scientists purposefully bucked conventional wisdom, which would combine the most repellent filler material with an equally durable polymer matrix. And rather, they looked for the best combination, where the team combed through vast computer databases for chemicals and used equation based on molecular properties to see how the two would behave when mixed together. And by the way, they have a video here. Let's go ahead and check it out while we're talking. But they said that significantly the coating appears to be ideal for the real world. You can brush or, of course, you can brush or spray it on, and it can easily resist the dents and scratches that would be all too common while in the open water. Because obviously, if this thing were to, be super hard to apply, then it wouldn't work, or at least it wouldn't be feasible. Or if people maybe if it like flaked off at a very alarming rate, maybe that'd be an environmental hazard. But if it sticks and it stays on and it's durable and easy to attach, then hey, that's a great thing. So unlike some lofty military projects, they said that there's a solid timeline in place where the university hopes to have a coating ready for small-scale military and civilian purposes within 2 years. And it wouldn't just be useful for boats, where it could also protect above water components like radar units and sensors, preventing them from rusting after a bad storm. Although, this is the same kind of technology that we were hoping for on windshields. They have like water repelling windshield coatings that you can do. But imagine if your windshield just didn't even let water adhere to the glass. Like it just slid right off. It would be a completely different driving experience. So there's a lot of uses for this thing. They just have to get it out of a laboratory and make it easy to do. So there you have that one. So let's see. There's that one. Again, that was more sciencey than it was techie. Let's talk about, this is a big shift. So for the longest time, there have been these things called gaming consoles. And game consoles have had a distinct difference when it comes to a regular computer. Where, before consoles, when you think of, PlayStation or, the N64 or, the Nintendo Entertainment System, what have you, they were computers, no one would doubt that, but they were highly specialized and compact and mass-produced. So your Xbox was just like every other Xbox, as opposed to computers, which maybe had a different, had a different processor, to a different power unit, to a different motherboard, to a different blah, blah, blah. So consoles are standardized. And one thing that consoles have had going for it was that they had these standard things called controllers. And, I have an Xbox controller right here. There are, of course, many, many different types of controllers, but one that consoles have been very unsure of if they want to bring them, if they want to bring them to consoles, is the idea of a keyboard and a mouse. Because while a lot of interfaces are optimized for a controller, a keyboard and mouse is undoubtedly a faster, more accurate, more more natural way of interacting with an operating system than a controller is. And I'm not talking about personal preference. I'm talking about the simple fact that a controller is not as accurate or as efficient as a keyboard and mouse. There's just no way around it. That's just the way of life. And so that's really has been what separated a computer from a console, was the type of input method. And there were ways around this. There were add-ons, and there were third-party hardware solutions that you could use, and in some cases illegally so, to get an upper hand in video games. Well, looks like the tides are turning, and this could be a pretty big shift as far as Microsoft goes, where they said that keyboard and mouse support could possibly be coming from Microsoft, saying that according to Windows Central, Microsoft and Razer may be working together to bring peripheral support to the console. And they said that Windows Central got its hands on details how the companies are working on bringing Razer Chroma lighting to Xbox games thanks to the Razer Black Widow Chroma V2, which would enable visual cues for abilities, for example. And this update was supposed to be included in the April 2018, which would have meant rollout in the fall 2018 update. So Windows Central was unable to confirm whether it would indeed include or has met some unforeseen delay. So here's the thing. All games must still support gamepad play, and each console can only support one keyboard and mouse. The developers will also be able to tell when users are playing with a keyboard and mouse versus a controller, and if they want to separate out those gamers for multiplayer play, they will be able to do so. So, and they have a quote here in the article saying that the thinking is reaction time is often faster on a keyboard and mouse, which might give players using them an unfair advantage, which it certainly would. Keyboard and mouse has a clear advantage over console controllers. So the Xbox will supposedly support all USB mice that can be used with Windows. Bluetooth and custom driver peripherals will not be supported. So think anything like Logitech will of course be supported. So Microsoft will also introduce an API that will allow developers to detect users that are taking advantage of peripherals that can mimic controller behavior to gain an advantage. So I've played against those, especially back in the Halo days, where people would have these hacked controllers, and they could, like let's say pressing A once is a signal, they could program it. So if they held down A, it would send not just one constant A signal, but rather it would send a strobe effect of A signals. So it would be, 100 presses of A. That could turn any kind of weapon that was maybe, one press is one shoot. Suddenly, instead of firing, maybe 5 or 6 a second, you're firing 1,000 times a second. Things like that. So they're going to be able to detect that as well, which is good, which is great. And really, the big news about all of this is that it's going to turn, in a lot of cases, it's going to turn Xbox consoles into full-blown computers. And that's exciting because the line between a computer and a console is blurring. And because Microsoft already said that it's working to bring all of Xbox's titles to PCs as well, maybe we will see the end of that particular separate releases of console and PC games. That's going to be great for PC gamers. So, all right, so there's that one. Let's talk about one that is, all right, this one's fun, but only if your name isn't John Oliver. So, or hey, maybe this is some kind of vindication if your name happens to be John Oliver. So this one coming to us from TechCrunch, and for those of you who don't watch his program, it's actually very entertaining, but he goes in depth on certain segments, once a week on HBO's Last Week Tonight. And here we go, saying that John Oliver is erased from Chinese internet following segment on China. So, HBO's Last Week Tonight has led to some drastic measures in China, where after an episode aired on June 17th, so this was actually last week's, the Chinese government is now trying to erase all signs of John Oliver on the internet, which, if you know anything about censorship in China, Chinese internet is almost an entirely separate internet. It is literally a walled garden with massive walls. So they could potentially do this, but not from the internet at large. So the show had a 20-minute segment on Xi Jinping and the Chinese government, where in particular, Oliver mentioned Xi's his abolishment of term limits and even compared him to Mao Zedong, which not very favorable. Anywho, Oliver also mentioned a number of, actually a large number of misdeeds by the Chinese government, which, one of them we actually cover here on the show quite a bit, includes the data coveted from WeChat. So WeChat, it's Chinese owned. It's essentially the Chinese version of Facebook Messenger. And yeah, the Chinese government takes all that data in, processes it, and they keep it and they apply it to citizens. They don't just keep it anonymous like a lot of companies promise to do in the United States, but they actually apply it to individuals and give them what is known as a social score. Essentially, are you talking bad about the government? Are you are you a responsible person? Are you lying? Are you doing something that we don't approve of? And if you are doing something that is, as we see it, bad, we will lessen your social score and we will lessen your chances of qualifying for a visa or qualifying for a passport or qualifying for a home loan. Essentially, they'll take away your rights if you say anything bad about the government. So it's pretty oppressive. So now it's a bit ironic that Oliver's show itself is now censored in China as a result of this episode. And of course, it proves Oliver's point that China still has a long way to go when it comes to human rights and freedom of the press. So Oliver made sure to mention that Xi doesn't like to be compared to Winnie the Pooh. And last year, Chinese authorities have banned all mentions of Winnie the Pooh. So it doesn't seem too hard to get under their skin. So according to the New York Times, many posts on social network platform Weibo mentioned John Oliver after the segment aired. Users didn't specifically talk about the segment, they focused on the host. But now, if you try to write a post that says John Oliver, you'll get an error message. Think about that. A proper name will return an error message if you try to post it on social media. That is some strict censorship. So, GreatFire.org also shows that HBO's website was blocked since Saturday and Sunday, and unless you have a working VPN or a proxy solution, you won't find John Oliver anywhere on Chinese websites. But, it's a pretty efficient way if you're looking to get blocked from Chinese internet, and that's simply talk smack about the government. So, man, he really struck a nerve with that one. All right, so we have time for maybe one more story, and we have a couple of these that we are just not going to be able to get to, which unfortunately I really would have liked to. let's talk about, all right, let's see how far we can get into this. So this is by The Intercept, and this is actually a very, very big story that broke. And, they did a lot of work and unfortunately not going to be able to follow up on it. But let's see. And by the way, someone from the chat room, Tech Rob, asked if Computer America has a Chinese following. And we do have charts, across our different distribution, podcasts, things like that. And I'll be honest with you, we actually have a pretty good following in Southeast Asia. Not China specifically, but we have quite a number of listeners. Like, we're talking multiple percentage points. Like, obviously, the bulk of Computer America is America. And honestly, I think that we have a pretty good following in the UK because of Patricia Reichel, from a little while ago. But yeah, we actually have a sizable chunk that come from Southeast Asia, not China specifically. So I think we're safe. I think we're underneath China's radar, so we can say these things. But yeah, I'm not worried too much about censorship of Computer America in China. But yeah, so this story, it was a big one. It was kind of broke today, and it follows along with the NSA. So if you remember years ago, it seems like so long ago, with Edward Snowden and the NSA and, essentially U.S. law enforcement agencies tracking everything that happened on the internet, on phone calls, on cell phones, and cell towers, essentially scraping every little piece of data from the U.S. public and saving it. And, well, turns out, this by The Intercept, they have checked out, or at least they've identified, 8 different NSA facilities that are hiding in plain sight. So you can see them here, and yeah, this is a rather long article. We're not going to be able to get to it all. But let's see, they have offices in Seattle, Washington, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Dallas, Atlanta, Washington, D.C., Illinois, New York, and they even give the addresses of these buildings, which are often, large office buildings. But as they say, they are likely NSA facilities that are being used to monitor people. So there are hundreds of AT&T owned properties scattered across the United States, and the 8 identified by The Intercept serve a specific function, which is processing AT&T customers' data and also carrying large quantities of data from other internet providers. They are known as backbone and peering facilities. So while network operators would usually prefer to send data through their own networks, often a more direct and cost-efficient path is provided by other providers' infrastructure. And if one network in a specific area of the country is overloaded with data traffic, another operator with capacity to spare can sell or exchange the bandwidth, reducing the strain on the congested region. And the exchange traffic is called peering and is an essential feature of the internet. And these offices that they have listed here, everything is essentially peered through these, through these data centers. And they even have a map here that shows even more, these networks and, kind of where they go. But safe to say, The Intercept is doing a lot of work when it comes to really identifying the extent of the NSA, what they're monitoring, how much they're monitoring, and let's face it, the amount of help that they're getting from the amount of help that they're getting from telecommunication companies such as AT&T, such as Comcast, and really any other big player. I doubt they would be allowed to be a big player in the United States if they did not subject themselves to some form of oversight from the NSA. So, folks, the music means that we're about done here. And I want to say thank you so much for tuning into Computer America. It's been a lot of fun. And hey, we hope that you do it again here real soon, such as tomorrow, 4 p.m. to 5 p.m. Eastern, Monday through Friday. And thank you to all of our chatters. Thank you to all of our listeners out there. However you consume Computer America, you're the best, and that is the best way to do it. And in the meantime, tune in tomorrow on the program as we are doing, I believe we have a guest. Nothing coming to mind right now, but we'll be sure to tune in tomorrow and we'll get that. In the meantime, everyone, thank you so much for tuning in, and catch you next time. Have a great day. Bye-bye, everyone.